My son was 6 years old when he started drawing houses that didn't exist. At least, that's what I thought. He'd sit at the kitchen table after school with his box of crayons, tongue poking out the corner of his mouth, sketching the same thing over and over. A brown house with a red door. A tall man standing next to a woman with yellow hair. And in every single picture, somewhere in the corner, a small figure lying at the bottom of a staircase, arms and legs bent at wrong angles. I should have paid attention sooner. I should have asked him what those pictures meant the very first time I saw one pinned to the refrigerator. But I was too busy being in love. Too busy believing I'd finally found happiness after years of raising Noah alone. Too busy trusting a man who had no business being trusted with anything, let alone my life or my son's. It was the fall of 2001. I was 34, living in a small rental house in Austin, Texas, working double shifts as a night nurse at St. David's Medical Center. Noah's father had left before Noah turned 1. Just packed a bag, drove to California, and never looked back. No child support, no birthday cards, no phone calls. For 5 years, it was just me and my boy, and we did okay. We had our routine. I'd drop Noah at my mother's house before my shift, pick him up in the morning, sleep while he was at kindergarten, then spend the afternoon with him before doing it all over again. It was exhausting, but it was ours. Then I met Daniel. He walked into the ER one Tuesday night with a gash across his palm from a broken wine glass. Said he'd been cooking dinner alone, trying to open a bottle of Cabernet, and the glass shattered. He was polite, funny, handsome in that clean-cut way that made you think of church on Sundays and well-mowed lawns. He wore a pressed shirt, even at 11 at night. Told me he was an estate attorney, handled wills and trusts for wealthy families around the hill country. He asked for my number before I'd even finished his stitches. Our first date was at a little Italian place on South Congress. He brought flowers. Who brings flowers to a first date anymore? He asked about Noah, asked about my work, asked about my life like he genuinely wanted to know every detail. By the third date, he'd memorized Noah's favorite dinosaur, his favorite cereal, his bedtime. By the 6th date, he was reading Noah stories before bed while I got ready for my shift. My mother adored him. My coworkers said I'd hit the jackpot. And I believed all of it, because Daniel never gave me a single reason not to. We got married 14 months later at the courthouse. Small ceremony, my mother and his sister as witnesses. His sister, Catherine. I need to talk about Catherine because she's at the center of everything that happened. Catherine was 41, 4 years older than Daniel, lived in a big limestone house in Dripping Springs, about 30 minutes west of Austin, with her husband Gerald. Gerald was 20 years older than her, a retired oil executive with more money than anyone could spend in 3 lifetimes. He was quiet, kind, a little awkward, the type of man who'd rather spend an evening reading than at a dinner party. He'd married Catherine late in life, no children of his own, and seemed content to give her whatever she wanted. From the outside, they looked like any other wealthy hill country couple. Big house, nice cars, charity galas twice a year. But Catherine was never satisfied. I noticed it early. The way she'd comment on Gerald's age, his slowness, his forgetfulness, the way she'd roll her eyes when he repeated a story, the way she talked about what she'd do someday with the house, the land, the money, always speaking in future tense, as if Gerald was already gone. I didn't like Catherine. I'll be honest about that. She was cold in a way that made you feel like you were being measured for something. But she was Daniel's sister, and Daniel loved her, defended her, visited her every Wednesday evening for dinner at her house. He said it was their tradition since childhood. I never questioned it. For the first year of our marriage, everything was good. Daniel was a wonderful stepfather to Noah, patient, present, playful. He taught Noah to ride a bike, helped him with his letters, built a treehouse in our backyard that was nicer than some apartments I'd lived in. Noah called him Danny, and when he said it, Daniel's whole face would light up. I thought we'd finally gotten our happy ending. Then the drawings started. September 2001. The world was still reeling from what happened in New York, and maybe that's why I didn't notice right away. I was picking up extra shifts, everyone was, and Daniel was home with Noah more than usual. When I'd come home in the mornings, Noah would be at the kitchen table drawing. I'd kiss his head, glance at his pictures, see houses and people and trees, and think nothing of it. It was my mother who noticed first. She'd come over one Saturday to watch Noah while Daniel and I went grocery shopping. When we came back, she pulled me aside in the hallway. Her face was strange, tight. "Have you looked at Noah's drawings? Really looked?" I told her he drew houses. "Kids draw houses." She shook her head. "Look again. Look at the one on the fridge." That evening, after Daniel left for his Wednesday dinner at Catherine's, I sat down at the kitchen table with Noah's stack of drawings. There must have been 30 or 40 of them by then, piled in a shoebox he kept under his bed. The first few were normal. Our house, our dog, Biscuit, Noah and me at the park. But about halfway through the stack, the pictures changed. There was a different house, bigger, drawn with brown crayon, always with a red front door. A tall stick-figure man next to a woman with yellow hair. I knew that house. It was Catherine and Gerald's place in Dripping Springs, the limestone, the red door, the big oak tree in the front yard. But it was the details that made my hands shake. In one drawing, the tall man and the yellow-haired woman were standing in a kitchen. Between them, on the counter, Noah had drawn small circles with careful letters above them. PILLS. In another, the tall man was pouring something into a cup. A stick figure in a chair nearby, labeled with an arrow and the word "sick man." In another, the woman with yellow hair was handing something to the tall man. Money signs, dollar signs, drawn in green crayon, dozens of them floating between their hands. And then the last drawing in the stack, the one that made me drop the whole pile on the floor. A staircase. A figure at the top, arms reaching out. Another figure at the bottom, bent wrong, a red scribble around the head. And at the top of the staircase, behind the falling figure, two shapes standing together, watching. Noah had written a word at the bottom of the page in his careful first-grade printing. Push. I sat there for a long time. The kitchen clock ticked. Biscuit snored on his bed in the corner. I could hear the neighbor's TV through the wall. Everything was so ordinary, so normal, and in my hands was a 6-year-old's crayon testimony of something I couldn't understand. When Noah came downstairs for his glass of water before bed, I was still at the table. "Baby, come here. Come sit with Mommy." He climbed into my lap. He smelled like soap and toothpaste. "Can you tell me about your drawings? The ones with the brown house?" His body stiffened. "Not a lot, but enough. A mother feels that." "It's Danny's sister's house," he said quietly. "I know, sweetheart. Can you tell me what's happening in the pictures?" He was quiet for so long, I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he spoke in a voice I'd never heard from him before, small and serious and much too old. "Mommy, Danny, and the yellow-hair lady are making the old man sick. I heard them talking, on the monitor, the baby monitor." When Noah spent the night at Catherine's, which happened once or twice a month when Daniel and I needed a date night, he slept in the upstairs guest room. Catherine had put a baby monitor in there because the house was so big and she wanted to hear if Noah needed anything during the night. But baby monitors work both ways if you know which button to press. And my 6-year-old, who loved pressing buttons, had figured that out. "What did you hear?" He twisted his pajama collar. "Danny said the pills are working. He said the old man is getting confused. The yellow-hair lady said it's not fast enough. Danny said, be patient, it has to look natural." Then she said, "What about the stairs?" And Danny said, "Maybe." After the next round, my blood went cold. Not metaphorically. I felt the temperature in my body drop, like someone had poured ice water through my veins. "When did you hear this?" "Last time I slept there." "And the time before that?" "They always talk at night when they think I'm sleeping." My son had been listening to my husband and his sister plan a murder. Lying in a guest room bed in a limestone house, holding a plastic baby monitor, hearing them discuss pills and stairs and patience while they thought he was asleep. And he'd done the only thing a 6-year-old knows how to do with information that terrifying. He'd drawn it. I held him so tight he squirmed. "Mommy, you're squishing me." "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. You did so good telling me. You did so good." That night, after Noah was in bed, I sat in the dark living room and thought about what to do. My first instinct was to confront Daniel, to scream, to demand an explanation, to tell myself there must be some innocent reason my son heard what he heard. But I'm a nurse. I've seen what happens when people confront the person who's hurting them. I've stitched up those patients. I've held the hands of women who thought talking would fix it. I called my mother at midnight, told her everything. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" Didn't say Noah might have imagined it. My mother is not that kind of woman. She said, "What do you need me to do?" The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the Travis County Sheriff's Office. I asked to speak with a detective. They put me in a small room with fluorescent lights and a metal table and a woman named Detective Alma Reyes, who had kind eyes and a very sharp mind. I showed her Noah's drawings. I told her what he'd heard through the monitor. She studied each drawing carefully, lining them up on the table like evidence. Which, I suppose, they were. "Your son drew these over what period of time?" "About 5 weeks. And you believe your husband and his sister are poisoning her husband?" "I don't want to believe it. But my son has no reason to make this up. He's 6. He doesn't even understand what he heard." Detective Reyes made 2 phone calls. The first was to Adult Protective Services. The second was to a colleague in the homicide unit who specialized in poisoning cases. Within 3 hours, I was sitting across from a team of 4 investigators, and Noah's crayon drawings were pinned to a whiteboard. They moved fast. A judge issued a warrant to test Gerald's medical records. What they found confirmed everything. Gerald had been admitted to his doctor 3 times in the past 4 months with symptoms of confusion, tremors, nausea, and rapid weight loss. His doctor had been testing for early-onset dementia and Parkinson's. But a toxicology screen, which no one had ordered because no one suspected foul play, revealed elevated levels of thallium in his system. Thallium, a heavy metal poison that mimics neurological disease. Odorless, tasteless, nearly undetectable in food or drink. The kind of thing an estate attorney with access to certain circles might know about. Detective Reyes sat me down the day after the test results came back. "We need your help," she said. "We need to catch them in the act." Every part of me wanted to run, to grab Noah, get in my car, drive to my mother's house, and never come back. But Gerald was dying, slowly, carefully, invisibly dying in that big, beautiful house with the red door. And the 2 people killing him were the 2 people he trusted most in the world. "What do I have to do?" She explained the plan. Daniel's Wednesday dinner at Catherine's was 2 days away. They wanted me to go with him, to be inside the house while surveillance teams watched from outside, to wear a wire, to keep my eyes open and my mouth shut and let them incriminate themselves. I spent those 2 days pretending everything was normal. Cooked dinner, kissed Daniel good morning, asked about his cases at work. Every word felt like swallowing glass. He sat across from me at breakfast, reading the paper, and I looked at his hands, the same hands that had built Noah's treehouse, and thought about those hands pouring poison into an old man's coffee. On Wednesday, I told Daniel I wanted to come to Catherine's for dinner. I'd never asked before. He seemed surprised, then pleased. "Of course," he said. "She'll love that." I wore the wire under a loose blouse, taped to my ribcage, so thin I could barely feel it. Noah stayed with my mother. Before I left, he hugged me in the driveway. "Be careful at the Brown house, Mommy. Don't drink anything." My 6-year-old told me not to drink anything, because he knew what they put in drinks at that house. The drive to Dripping Springs took 35 minutes. Daniel played classic rock on the radio and sang along. He was in a good mood, relaxed. I watched the hill country roll by outside my window and tried to keep my breathing steady. Somewhere behind us, 2 unmarked cars followed at a distance. Catherine opened the red door with a wide smile. She wore a cream-colored blouse and pearls, offered me a glass of white wine. I accepted it and didn't drink a single sip. Gerald was in his armchair in the living room. I almost didn't recognize him. In the 3 weeks since I'd last seen him, he'd lost maybe 15 pounds. His hands trembled when he reached out to shake mine. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Sorry," he said. "Haven't been feeling well. Doctors can't figure it out." I squeezed his hand and wanted to scream. Dinner was roast chicken. Catherine served Gerald a separate plate, said it was a special low-sodium version his doctor recommended. I watched her carry it from the kitchen with both hands, watched her set it in front of him with a smile that never reached her eyes. I excused myself to use the bathroom. In the hallway, I checked the baby monitor's base station on the kitchen counter. The receiver light was green. If Noah had been upstairs, he'd have heard everything said in this kitchen. My son wasn't imagining things. He never had been. After dinner, Catherine poured coffee. She made Gerald separately. I watched from the living room doorway as she opened a capsule over his cup, tapped the powder in, stirred it, and brought it to him with a biscotti on the saucer. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know anyone was watching. But 13 people heard it through my wire. I went back to the living room. Daniel and Catherine exchanged a look when Gerald's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped his cup. A look I'd seen between them before and never understood. Now I understood. It was anticipation. "We should get him upstairs," Daniel said. "He looks tired." Gerald protested weakly. Catherine took one arm, Daniel took the other. They guided him toward the staircase, the big wooden staircase with the carved banister that wound up to the second floor, the staircase from Noah's drawing. My heart stopped. "Actually," I said, my voice too loud, "let me help." I moved between Daniel and Gerald, took Gerald's arm, wrapped it around my shoulder. I could feel his bones through his shirt. He weighed nothing. This man who used to be tall and strong was being hollowed out from the inside. Daniel's face flickered. Annoyance. Just a flash, then the pleasant mask returned. We walked Gerald upstairs together, all three of us, and I did not let go of him until he was sitting on his bed. I helped him with his shoes, pulled the blanket over his legs. He patted my hand. "You're a good woman," he said. "Daniel's lucky." I couldn't speak. I just nodded and left the room before I broke down. In the car on the way home, Daniel was quiet. "You were strange tonight," he said. "Just worried about Gerald. He looks terrible. He's old. It happens." "He's 62, Daniel." "That's not old." Silence. Then he reached over and squeezed my knee. "You're sweet to care." The arrests happened 4 days later. Detective Reyes and her team had enough. The wire recording of Catherine preparing Gerald's coffee with the powder. The toxicology reports. The financial records showing Catherine had recently changed Gerald's will through Daniel's firm, making herself sole beneficiary of an estate worth $11 million. The pharmacy records showing Daniel had purchased thallium sulfate online using a fake identity, shipped to a P.O. box in Round Rock. They arrested Catherine at her house on a Monday morning. She was watering her garden when the squad cars pulled up. She didn't scream or cry. She just set down the watering can and held out her wrists, like she'd been expecting it. They arrested Daniel at our house 30 minutes later. Noah was at school. Thank God. I'd made sure of that. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched 2 officers handcuff my husband in our living room, next to the treehouse plans still tacked to the wall, next to Noah's backpack hanging on the hook by the door. He looked at me and understood immediately. "It was you," he said. "Not a question." "It was our son," I replied. He heard everything through the baby monitor. He drew everything he heard. He's been trying to tell me for weeks. The color drained from his face. Not guilt. Not remorse. Fear. The cold, calculating fear of a man realizing a 6-year-old child had unraveled everything. He never said he was sorry. Not to me, not to Gerald, not to anyone. His only words to his attorney were about the case, about evidence, about defense strategies. He never once asked about Noah. Gerald survived, barely. The thallium had damaged his peripheral nerves, and he'd never fully regained feeling in his hands and feet. He spent 3 months in the hospital and another 6 in rehabilitation. But he lived. The doctors said another 2 weeks of dosing and his kidneys would have failed. 2 more weeks, and my son's drawings would have been about a dead man instead of a sick one. The trial lasted 11 months. The prosecution used Noah's drawings as evidence, each one dated on the back in my mother's handwriting because she'd started dating them the day I showed her. A child's crayon drawings became Exhibit A through Exhibit F in a case covered by every news station in Texas. The jury didn't see a 6-year-old's scribbles. They saw a map of a crime drawn by the only witness brave enough to tell the truth. Daniel received 22 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Catherine received 25. The judge called it one of the most calculated, cold-blooded schemes she'd seen in 30 years on the bench. Gerald came to the sentencing. He sat in the front row in a wheelchair, his hands still shaking, and watched the woman he'd loved and the brother-in-law he'd trusted get led away in chains. After the verdict, he found me in the hallway. "Your boy saved my life," he said. "I want you to know I'll never forget that. As long as I'm breathing, I'll remember what that child did for me. He sent Noah a letter every year after that. Every single year, on the anniversary of the arrests. Simple letters. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for drawing what you saw. Thank you for telling your mother. Gerald passed away in 2014 from natural causes, peacefully, in his sleep, in a smaller house in Fredericksburg where he'd moved after selling the limestone place. He was 75. He'd gotten 13 more years of life because a 6-year-old boy pressed a button on a baby monitor and picked up a crayon. Noah and I moved to Colorado after the trial, Denver. I needed mountains between me and that chapter of my life. I went back to nursing, worked at a hospital in Aurora, put Noah in a school with good counselors and a great art program. He kept drawing, but the houses changed. Our new house, mountains, snowmen, normal things, kid things. He's 29 now, works as a detective with the Austin Police Department. When people ask him why he went into law enforcement, he tells them about the drawings, about the brown house with the red door, about the baby monitor and the old man in the armchair and the mother who believed him when believing was the hardest thing she'd ever done. I'm 63, retired, living in a small house in Sedona, Arizona, with a garden and a cat named Biscuit III, because some names are too good to let go of. Noah visits every other weekend. He brings his girlfriend, a teacher named Maria, and they cook dinner while I sit on the patio and watch the red rocks turn gold in the sunset. Last Thanksgiving, Noah brought a box with him. Old, taped shut, a little dusty. He set it on the kitchen table after dinner. I found this in Grandma's attic when we were cleaning out her house, he said. She kept everything. Inside were his drawings. All of them. The brown house, the red door, the pills, the tall man and the yellow-haired woman, the staircase. 43 drawings in total, each one dated on the back in my mother's handwriting. I held them and cried. Not sad tears, grateful ones. Do you remember drawing these? I asked him. He nodded. Every single one. I remember being scared that you wouldn't believe me, that you'd say I was making it up or being dramatic. Kids get told that a lot, you know, that they're exaggerating, that they don't understand what they're seeing. But I believed you. He put his arm around me. Yeah, Mom, you did. And that's why Gerald got 13 more years. That's why we got all of this. He gestured around the kitchen. The warmth, the food, the laughter from the other room where Maria was FaceTiming her mother. I think about Daniel sometimes. Not often, and not with anger anymore. He's still in prison, won't be eligible for parole until 2023. Catherine got out last year, moved to Florida, cut ties with everyone. Gerald's estate went to a medical research foundation after he died. The limestone house in Dripping Springs was sold to a young family. I hope they painted over that red door. What stays with me, what I carry every single day, is how close it all came to going the other way. If Noah hadn't figured out the baby monitor, if he hadn't drawn what he heard, if my mother hadn't noticed the pictures, if I'd told him he was imagining things, being silly, misunderstanding adult conversations, Gerald would be dead. Catherine would be rich. Daniel would be sleeping next to me every night with poison in his pocket and a smile on his face. A 6-year-old saved a man's life with a box of crayons and the courage to draw what scared him. That's not a story you forget. That's not a lesson you take lightly. So I'll say what I've said every time I've told this story, to journalists, to therapists, to the women in my support group who are still learning to trust themselves again. When your children tell you something, listen. When they draw something disturbing, don't dismiss it. When they say they heard something scary, don't tell them they misunderstood. Children don't have the filters we do. They don't rationalize. They don't make excuses for people they love. They see what's there, plain and simple, and they report it the only way they know how. Noah reported it with crayons. And it saved a life. If you're in a situation right now where something feels wrong, where the person beside you isn't who they claim to be, where your gut is screaming but your heart keeps making excuses, listen to your gut. Listen to your children. Listen to the quiet voice that says this isn't right. And if you find drawings under your child's bed that don't make sense, that scare you, that show things a child shouldn't know about, don't put them back. Don't close the box. Don't pretend you didn't see them. Sit down, look carefully, and believe what's in front of you. It might save someone's life. It saved mine. It saved Gerald's. And it turned a scared little boy with a box of crayons into the bravest person I've ever known.